Well, hey there. I've received a request from a dear friend to do a video on how to chop wood effectively. So let's begin. In terms of tools, I have in front of me a tomahawk, an axe, and a splitting maul. For this application, tomahawk, way too small. Next up, we have an axe. As you can see, an axe is pretty narrow when you compare it to a maul. And now an axe is better for cutting cross grain, if you want to chop into something and remove material. So cross grain would be laying the log down on its side, as so, and cutting into it this way. Cutting with the grain is standing the log up like this and splitting it with a maul. So an axe will have an edge on it. For our application today, we will be using a maul. Now a maul is much wider because it directs more of the force outward instead of into the log. And as you can see, a maul does not have any edge on it. I mean, this has never been sharpened, never will be sharpened. Any triangle-shaped piece of metal can split a piece of wood. Now when it comes to the logs themselves, I usually like to keep my logs at about this height. As you see down below, we have logs of a different height. And I will demonstrate how it's much easier to split a shorter log than a longer log. When splitting the log itself, if you look at the face of this, you can see this log has a lot of cracks here. Nice big one right here. Now when I swing my maul, I want to aim for this crack because it's already weakened in that area. I also want to avoid any knots or cross grain or twisted grain within the log when I swing at it and aim. Now let's move into posture. When I go to split this log, I want to stand with my feet approximately shoulder widths apart, and I am right-handed. So for me, I take my left hand and I grip it down here, and my right hand is up near the maul itself. Now my next movement is to bring the maul up over my head, and then down into my piece of wood. And notice as I do that, I'll actually raise up with my toes to get myself a little bit higher in the air to increase the overall potential energy that I have. So that's splitting a log. Now, take up the piece. This is still too big to go in my fire. I set it back up here, and I begin again. Now, let's move on to something bigger. Now, as I look at this log, there's no obvious cracks in it, as you can see. So typically, it's always better to swing near the edge of the log. And I also notice it has a bump out here, which means that the grain is probably a little bit twisted or non-linear, not up and down. Now this is an excellent point. As you can see, I did not split that on the first swing, despite having a good hit. And that's because this log is quite a bit taller than my other log. Now, there could be other reasons, twisted grain, but generally a shorter log is going to split easier than a taller log. Now, if this happens, if I don't split it on the first time, take a look again and see that I created a crack in this log with that hit. Now, my next swing is going to be along this crack again because this is a weakened area. And there we have it. One important note is to take note of the base that I have set my logs on. This base is very wide and it is taller. Swinging on something that's on the ground, something short, is going to be more stressful on my back, so I like to raise the logs up. Now I'm taller, hence my base here is taller. If you're shorter, you can make it a little bit shorter as well. Another very important note for safety is the wideness of my base. If, for instance, I have a very small base, and let's say I miss my log when I swing, I miss my base, I have all this momentum as I swing this axe, and it's very likely that I may hit myself in the shins if I were to swing, miss, and then come down, and that's very dangerous. So having a wide base, in case you miss, is very important. Thank you, and I hope that was helpful.